What is up guys, welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and today I'm here with what I'm calling the no-nonsense $600 gaming PC build for 2019. I've really tried to extrapolate the best value possible with this system to get the most frame rate for as little cash as possible. So without any further ado, let's dive straight into it.
I'm too old now, I'm just afraid that you walk away.
As with all of my PC builds, we're going to start off with the CPU and motherboard and build the rest of the system around them. Now, we sit at an interesting time period for processors in particularly. AMD are expected to refresh some of their budget Ryzen chips shortly, but prices have been rising as AMD has been gaining market share. Excuse the awful puns there. Even though these are more expensive, they still beat out any of the Intel options, which prompts me to pick this, the Ryzen 5 1600. Now, I'd recommend picking this up secondhand on eBay, though today's budget does afford a brand new unit. If you do so, you'll save a bit of cash overall, and there's plenty of good used options to go for as people upgrade to the now sort of eye-wateringly expensive Ryzen 5 3600 and 3600X CPUs. I'm going to be building onto this, which is the AMD MSI B450M Pro M2 motherboard. And I know some of you will be thinking, James, why not save money on a B350 board, as this chip will work just fine with that older chipset. And the reason I'd go B450 is that you tend to get a wider feature set, and they're much easier to find, both new and used, to be completely honest with you. You aren't going to save a great deal on a motherboard by going secondhand, so a brand new unit like this one from MSI is a great option. Installing the CPU is super duper easy. Simply grab the CPU here and find the notch on the processor, line it up with the notch on the socket. AMD CPUs are particularly easy. Drop it in like so and pop that retention arm down, and that really is all there is to it. You then want to take your AMD stock cooler, and typically these will come pre-applied with thermal paste, but because I've used this for a couple of different builds, I've had to wipe it off. So I'm going to apply my own from this handy dandy Corsair tube. Let's see if I can get the lid off. Once you've done that, you just want to screw the CPU cooler in. Try and do it in a cross pattern, so tighten up opposite screws sort of one by one. And that really is all there is to it, to be honest with you. It's then simply a case of popping in our 4-pin CPU fan header. And just like that, the CPU cooler is installed and has power as well for the cable, so jobs are good at. Now that our CPU, motherboard and CPU cooler are all dealt with, it's time to move on to the memory. And this here is the steal of the century. I managed to pick up this TeamGroup T-Force Delta RGB kit from Amazon for $67. Now, prices are subject to change, so I'll leave up-to-date links in the description below, but you can find it for that price if you're prepared to shop around as well. This 16GB kit has a 2666 MHz clock speed, though don't panic, it can be overclocked, and that's one of the advantages of this memory and this motherboard pairing. In order to install your memory, all you need to do is first take it out of the box, and then pull back the retention clips on both of your RAM DIMM slots for this motherboard. You then want to line up the notch on the memory with the notch on the motherboard and apply even pressure to both sides. The memory DIMM is then going to click in just like so, and honestly this is super duper easy. This memory is of course RGB as well, which means it's going to look absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to see what kind of RGB effects we can get going on a build that costs so little money. Now, the next component we're going to deal with here is the case, and this is of course where all of our components are going to go and work nicely together. This is the Aerocool Cylon Pro, and it's one of the cheapest cases available on the market. What's more, it's got a full tempered glass side panel, he says, as well as a nice bit of RGB at the front here, and decent cable management options with a power supply shield, which is going to be nice and aesthetically pleasing. Alright then, now that we've stripped the case back a little bit, taken off the tempered glass and the rear side panel, we need to pop in our I/O shield and then screw in our motherboard. You really don't want to forget to install the I/O shield, because if you do, you're going to have to take the motherboard out again and just basically start a lot of the process over, and it's a massive pain in the backside. We're then going to kind of provisionally pop the motherboard in place to see if we've got the standoffs in the right places. And if not, like in our case, head into the accessories bag that comes included with the case. Status update, I installed the wrong standoff places, which you don't want to do, so just sort of go back and get it right the second time before you power the system on, because otherwise that could be bad. Now that the motherboard is installed and the table is adequately messy, we're going to remove one of these hard drive cages to install the storage for today's build. I opted to keep it simple and importantly cheap with a 1TB Seagate Barracuda hard drive, though if you wanted to speed things up a little bit, a 240GB SanDisk SSD Plus won't go amiss for $20 to $30. But in a build like this, every single dollar counts. And as far as performance for gaming and FPS goes, this is going to work nicely. Now with this cage, I believe it's a simple case of sort of lining up these screws in the hard drive with the sort of inset screws of the cage, and wow, that was actually really simple. Really simple, sorry, I am losing my voice quite quickly. We are going to need to wire up our storage and our hard drive a little bit later, but for now, let's pop in our power supply. Once again, with the emphasis on getting as much bang for the buck, I opted for the cheapest, reputable, 80+ certified 500 watt power supply. In this case, all we've got to do is slide it in from the back. And then screw it in with these standard power supply screws that come included with the case. Now there is one key downside with any budget power supply really, and it's these multicoloured kind of ketchup and mustard cables, as they're dubbed in the industry, which don't look the greatest, but hopefully the tinted tempered glass side panel should mitigate the effects somewhat. If you come into some cash later down the line, you can get universal sleeved extensions, which cost about $10 to $20 each, so that's not a bad shout, but in this build there wasn't quite the budget. Alright then, now that the bulk of our components are in, we still need to do some cable management and wire up our storage drive, but we can now install our graphics card. This is one of the major improvements over my other $600 build really, is that this is the GTX 1660. A piece more powerful than the 1650 and with around the power of a 1060 from last generation at a blistering $200 to $220 price point. It's a great value card. This particular Windforce model from Gigabyte is a great choice, but honestly, anything GTX 1660 will do the job nicely, and anywhere you can find a deal is the place I'd recommend going. Alright then, with all the components now installed and things cable managed a little bit better than they were a few moments ago, it's time to take a deeper delve into some of the benchmarks that I alluded to earlier. But first, a message from today's video sponsor, Skillshare. It's the go-to place to fuel your curiosity, creativity, or even your career. With thousands of online classes covering a range of creative and entrepreneurial/businessy topics, it's fantastic. I've been loving this course on the fundamentals of editing and post-processing in Lightroom to try and elevate my photography game, and I think I'm getting there. Make those PC shots over on the Instagram look just perfect. What's more, with the first link in the description below, you can get a free 2-month premium membership, which gives you unlimited access so you can learn away to your heart's content. And what's more, it's super duper affordable. At less than $10 a month for an annual membership, plus of course those 2 free months, it works out way cheaper than pricey in-person classes or workshops any day of the week. Download classes to your phone for offline viewing out and about. It's so convenient and makes learning from the experts easy. Head to the link down below, the first one in the description, to get started today with 2 months of unlimited access completely free, and join Skillshare's epic online learning community.
Maybe I'm too old now, or just afraid that you'll walk away.
Now that the snazzy montage is out of the way, and if you like that kind of glam footage vibe, hit me up on Instagram, it's at GeekaWhat. I'll link it in the description below. Now, the gaming scene in 2019 going into 2020, it's bonkers I've just said that, is a really interesting one. No longer is it a case of here's the latest, flashiest, massive AAA title and 80-90% of people are all just playing this. There's such a variety, and I want to talk about that a little bit as you see gameplay taken directly from this system here. The likes of Overwatch and Rainbow Six Siege are still massive and seem to be more sort of popular now than they actually were a couple of years back. Now, this machine does give you a bit of a decision to make in those kind of titles. Do you want 1440p medium to high settings with that frame rate knocking on the door of 60 FPS, or do you want to tone things down a bit and jump up to 75 or 80 frames per second? Equally, you can sacrifice a little bit of resolution, not much, just a bit, and jump down to 1080p, which is going to afford you sort of upwards of 100 FPS. In particularly, Overwatch is a great example of that. Moving on to the older games, League of Legends, World of Warcraft, Minecraft and CSGO, this machine is going to handle them no problem whatsoever. Unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend the new sort of Minecraft with shaders on this system. Whilst the older NVIDIA GPUs will support ray tracing, they haven't got that proprietary chip and hardware inside, which is just going to decimate your frame rate, and I wouldn't bother. I'd stick with turning the settings up higher, and this goes for all RTX games, instead of trying to get that extra bit of detail in your reflections and shadows and fire and that kind of thing. Grand Theft Auto 5 is another game that's a really great benchmark of a machine like this. 1080p is probably where I'd sit for GTA 5, even though 1440p is going to be possible. And I said this in a video not too long ago, it's amazing now how far GPUs have come. When you think of a graphics card of this tier, you think of the GTX sort of 950 and 1050 of what feels like yesteryear, and to think that you could play 1440p GTA 5 on that tier of card was pretty much unimaginable, but nowadays that isn't a problem. And with that being said, I think that covers pretty much all the games of any major interest. I'm sure someone in the comments below will have a really acute and nuanced suggestion that I definitely should have tested. But if you do let me know in the comments, because I will try and do my best to help you out with performance figures and that kind of thing. If you enjoyed today's video though, give it a big old like rating, get subscribed and hit me up on social media. Instagram, Twitter will do me just fine. As always though, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next GeekaWhat video.